supplementary question has been asked, and we now move to the next question. Lord Fowkes of Connaught.
Leave to ask the question standing in my name and the order.
Lord True.
My Lords, the Ministerial Code is the responsibility of the Prime Minister of the day, and is customarily updated and issued upon their assuming or returning to office. And any amendments to the Code are a decision for the Prime Minister.
Disappointing, but not unexpected answer. However, would the Minister agree with me that the way that the Prime Minister dealt with the Hancock affair, with the generic planning fiasco, and with the Priti Patel bullying saga, where the wrong person resigned, were not exactly models of integrity and transparency as required in the Code? And will the Government now therefore reconsider the recommendations of the Institutes for Government and others that the Code should have a statutory underpinning and that the independent adviser should be given some real powers before our parliamentary democracy becomes a laughingstock around the world?
My Lords, I wouldn't agree with the noble Lord's more general observations, and I did agree with Mr. Speaker in the other place yesterday. I think that we should speak softly on these matters. The Prime Minister's constitutional role as the Sovereign's principal adviser means that the management of the executive is wholly separate from the legislature. It's the Prime Minister alone, and we've discussed this in this House before, who advises the Sovereign on the exercise of powers in relation to government, such as the appointment, dismissal and acceptance of resignation of ministers. Therefore, it is right constitutionally that the Prime Minister of the day has responsibility for the Ministerial Code, and I cannot see the Government being persuaded that a statutory basis for an inherently prerogative function would be appropriate or desirable.
Tomlinson.
Does the noble Lord the Minister, to any degree, share my sense of shame and outrage at the extent to which the requirements of the Ministerial Code have been trashed by this government? As there are no planned changes to the Ministerial Code, can we at least anticipate that the government will take its existing responsibilities seriously as a solemn and binding duty to the British people?
My Lords, of course, and again I don't agree with the political comment at the outset. The Government will carefully consider comments made by parliamentarians in both Houses and consider the work of Mr Nigel Boardman, the CSPL and PACAC when the committee reports. We will make a policy statement in due course, but as you would expect, we intend to consider these matters carefully.
Lord Stunnell. Not present. Lord McLaughlin.
Will my noble friend agree that while some some members of your Lordship's House may have a blackout as far as memory before 2010 is concerned, they've always been very happy for it to be a non-statutory body before, and it is right that the Prime Minister who is elected is the sole arbiter on who serves in his government.
Well, I do agree with my noble friend, but I will continue my policy of not throwing political stones. We all know that they exist. My Lords, the Prime Minister is accountable to the electorate as well as to Parliament, and the electorate, as my noble friend says, will be the ultimate judge of what I consider to be his high service to this country.
Basildon.
My Lords, following on from the Lord McLaughlin's question, can I say, does the noble Lord Minister understand why the Ministerial Code being made statutory is such an issue now? And I put to him whether it's ignoring the judgment of Holac about the appointment of Conservative Party donors to your Lordship's House, whether it's ignoring the judgment of the independent adviser into allegations of bullying by the Home Secretary, or the shenanigans which have brought shame on Parliament as the Government attempted to defend Owen Paterson and defy the Common Standards Commissioner and the committee. There is increasing evidence that this Prime Minister considers the rules to be for other people that don't apply to him or his close chums. So will the Noble Lord Minister now accept, as many others have, as my Noble Lord Fawkes raised as well, that this Prime Minister cannot be trusted to uphold the Ministerial Code?
Very good. No, my Lords.
Wallace of Saltaire.
I'm sure the Minister is fully briefed on the report last week from the Committee on Standards and Public Life. Paragraph 225, I quote, says, "It is clear to the Committee that the degree of independence in the regulation of the Ministerial Code falls below what is necessary to ensure effective regulation and maintain public credibility." Does the Government accept this criticism? And if so, are there plans to strengthen the independence of the Advisor on Ministerial Interests?
My Lords, I have partly answered that in saying that the Government is obviously considering all the very important and thoughtful reports that have been presented on these matters in recent weeks and months. We do take matters of ethics extraordinarily seriously, as I believe every member of your Lordship's House does on all sides. And I give the assurance to the House we will come back with a statement on these issues in due course.
My Lords, does my noble friend agree that the vast majority of ministers of all parties have been honourable, decent, hard-working people committed to the public weal, that the current ministers have been facing a challenging pandemic and emergency of unprecedented character, and that the sound of the wolf pack in your Lordship's House is a particularly disedifying one?
My Lords, I would never characterise Her Majesty's opposition as wolves. But, my Lords, I do think my noble friend does make a point of great importance, and I think that we should all reflect that the overwhelming character of British government and public life is a character that is not corrupt and which is driven by a sense of public duty which goes right to the top of this government.
His turn.
You know, I feel for the Minister because I know him. I think the whole House knows him to be a particularly honourable member. And we value everything he's done here. But I do have to ask the Minister, is he at all ashamed of some of his colleagues in the other place?
My Lords, I don't comment on the other place, but I do refer, noble Lords, to the observations made by my right honourable friend, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, at the outset of the debate in the other place yesterday.
Of Pittenweem.
My Lord, the Speaker in the other House invited the members to speak softly. The Prime Minister took that literally because he was 400 metres away. I beg your pardon. I've moved rather too quickly away from imperial measure. But he certainly didn't contribute. He spoke softly. But isn't the issue not one of changing the code? The real problem is getting the Prime Minister to implement it.
Right. My Lords, I've explained the constitutional position. So far as the Prime Minister's movements are concerned, I'm thankfully not responsible for them, but he was on a pre-arranged official visit to the North East. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, who heads up the Cabinet Office, is responsible for this, led in the parliamentary debate, and the Speaker was informed that both my right honourable friend and the Leader of the Scottish Nationalists would be unable to attend.
Well,
my Lords, until a generation or so ago, there was almost no statutory regulation, either of ministers or of members of the other place or of members of this chamber. Does my noble friend the Minister see a danger that the proliferation of codes and statutes and commissions skews incentives, encouraging politicians to tick the boxes rather than asking themselves whether their behaviour is in the broader sense moral or edifying? Isn't there a danger that we are replacing a culture of conscience with a culture of compliance?
My Lords, my noble friend is absolutely right to say that that the background, provisions, guidance has changed and evolved over time, and it will continue to evolve over time.
Lord Regard, does the Minister agree that when you're in a position of leadership, asking people to do things, it's always good if you can set an example? Yeah. So could he give us two examples of where the Prime Minister has done something under the code to set an example to other ministers?
Yeah. My Lords, I will. I would say that seeing with 9 seconds left, I deliberately gave rather a short answer to my noble friend to enable the noble lord, who I very greatly admire, to make his point. I wish it had been a better point. My lords, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, adheres to high standards of behaviour, and he expects the highest standards of behaviour from the Prime Minister, from ministers, every day. Far more on 2 occasions, every day.
My lords, that concludes